Okay, let's start this drawing. Right now we have no settings set whatsoever. This is vanilla AutoCAD right out of the box. So the first thing we're going to set is our area that we're going to work in. Model space has an infinite area. This area that you work in goes on infinitely in the X direction, in the Y direction, and also in the Z direction. The Z direction is unseen right now, but if I do this, now you can see that Z has a direction. Z moves up and down. It is the third dimension on the paper. So we're going to go back to the original way this is supposed to be. So this is the 2D drawing orientation. Now I'm going to set my limits. That is the area that I want to set up to draw. If you're going to draw on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, we can set that limits up to mimic that paper size. And basically, when you start to figure out what you're going to draw and what scale you're going to draw it at, you will determine what size paper you need to draw. We'll go into that later on. But right now we're going to use 8.5 by 11 limits. So we're going to type in limits. And the lower left-hand corner is defaulted to 0, 0. So you can look down right here at the command line and see that that is the default. So if we go ahead and accept the default, now we're asked to specify the upper right-hand corner. Usually the upper right-hand corner is 9 by 12, but for some reason this is off a little bit. So we're going to redo that and type that in. So the first number is going to be 11.5, or 11, sorry. And then we hit the tab button to move it over to the other range, and we will call that 8.5. So now our limits are 0, 0 and 11 by 8.5. So we're going to visualize that on the screen, and how to do that is we're going to change the display of this grid. So we're going to go down to Grid Display, and we could right click and go to Settings and change the settings, or we can type in DS, enter, and that takes us to the drafting settings, and we can go back to Grid and Snap. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to just see the grid as it is displayed in the limits. So I'm going to turn off the grid beyond the limits. I also want my grid to stay the same size, so I'm going to change that adaptive grid, and I'm going to turn it off. Adaptive grid means that if I zoom in and out, that grid's going to get smaller and bigger as I zoom. It will adapt to the size of the screen or to the size of the zoom. I want it to stay the same. If I draw an object that's 1 inch based on my grid, I want the grid to remain locked to that 1 inch dimension. Grid spacing, I'm going to change to 1 inch. Whoops. I hit enter. So there it is. It's 1 inch in the X, it's 1 inch in the Y. Now how do I know that 1 represents an inch? Well, I don't. I just know that this is the default decimal value of units, and 1 is equal to something, and since I opened a imperial drawing, it uses inches and feet. AutoCAD recognizes inches first. So if you type in 16, it will not give you a line or a dimension of 16 feet, but of 16 inches. So I leave the snap off, equal X and Y spacing, and we'll just say OK for now. Turn the grid on. There's my grid. And if you notice, this is 8.5 by 11. These are 5. So I know that 5, 10, 11, 5, 3 squares, 8.5. So I've set up my limits. Not very much, but it's enough that I know that if I draw in this area and keep everything I have in this area, now barring printers that have a margin, I know that pretty much everything that I draw will be printed on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Now let's take a look at units. So all I did to get to that was type in units. And right now my units are set to decimal. Precision is set to 4 decimal spaces. Now, I am not going to be drawing anything that needs that much precision. At first, I'm just going to draw with 2 decimal places. That'll be good enough to start drawing. Degrees and decimals. This will show us 45 degrees, 30 degrees, 15 degrees. If I wanted to show us a fraction of a degree, I would just change that to show the precision at 2 decimal places or 1/100ths. So if you look in here in the sample output, this is a sample of what will be shown. It will either be 1.5, 2.0, 0.00, that's a linear dimension. And then we have linear and angle. This is 3 units, whether it's 3 inches or whatever they are, but they are inches. I just want to let you know that they are inches. And the angle of that line is 45 degrees. So we're going to go ahead and accept that, and now we can start drawing. Right now our layer is set to 0. What is a layer? A layer is merely a representation of the object. An object can be a line, it can be a circle, an arc, an ellipse, a square. It can be anything that you draw, and anything that you draw can go on a layer. Right now the layer is 0. If I go up to layer properties and I take a look at that, right now there is only 1 layer. Let me make this dialog box a little smaller so that you can see it. It wants to, keeps on wanting to flip. Sorry about that, folks. So here's my layers. Now anything I draw at this point will go on layer 0. I try to stay off of layer 0 because layer 0 has some other powers that we won't be talking about in this video, but we'll explain in another video soon enough. If I want to create other layers, I can just go up here to new layer, pick new layer, and the default is going to be layer and a number. And if I keep on creating layers, it will just give it a new layer. Now we want to be able to understand what these layers are, so if we pick that, we can change that layer name, and I'm just going to change it to something real simple. I'm going to call it object, and I'm going to call it solid. So what I'm going to use this layer for is anything I draw that is a solid object, I'm going to place it on this layer. I'm going to change the color so that I know that anything that is yellow is on that layer, and I'm going to use a continuous line. For right now, I'm going to just make another layer, and I'm going to recall this layer as object hidden. And anything I draw on this layer will be hidden, or I'll use a hidden line. I'm going to change the color of that so I know what it is. The color of that I'm going to change to something like this, so it's color 40. The line type I'm going to change. Now right now all I did was pick this continuous line. Oops, sorry about that. Right now there's no other lines loaded, so I'm going to load another line, and I'm going to go down. This is real simple. Couldn't ask for anything better. I'm just going to go to hidden, say OK, and say OK. Now notice that the line type did not change. That's okay. It's loaded in the drawing. It's available. It's just not picked yet. So now I'm going to pick on it, take hidden, and now this line type for the layer object hidden is now a hidden line. So I'm going to move to this layer, I'm going to make that layer current, and I'm going to get out of this dialog box, and now I'm going to draw. I'm on the object solid layer, and I'm going to draw. So I'm just going to draw a line. I'm going to pick a point, and I'm going to just drag it around. Now as I drag, it gives me little dialog boxes, little cues as to what I'm doing. Right now, the blue letters or numbers indicate the length of that line as I pull it across. If I hit the tab button, it moves to the angle in it, and I can see what angle I'm drawing at. Right now my snap for angles is set to every 30 degrees. So I can type in a number also as long as that blue box is highlighted. I can type in a number, let's say 33 degrees, and hit enter. The length of that line is determined by how far I've dragged it, so it's not real accurate in that sense. I'm just showing you a little bit about how to draw. This is not drawing with accuracy, this is just kind of a pull, point, and click kind of drawing. So again, the length is the first thing that is showing up in blue. All I have to do is hit my tab button, and now I'm sent back to angles. If I hit my tab button again, I'm set back to lengths. So I'm going to type in 2.5, enter, and it draws a line that's 2.5 units or 2.5 inches. So anything I draw right now will give me how far I'm drawing, or the dimension of that drawing. So if I type in 2.5, I get a circle with a radius of 2.5. If I want to check that, I can, here's my properties dialog box, I always keep that open. If it's not open, all I got to do is pick your object, right click, and here it is, right, properties right there. Now I have my properties dialog box docked to the side of my screen, and if I want to look at my radius, it's right down here, and my radius is 2.5. If I change that number to 3, my circle changes. So that's just a little bit about setting up a drawing. It's very simple. It's very, very much a beginner tutorial. This is just to get you started. There are other videos that will go further in depth into setting up a drawing and then drawing. But this should get you started. Thank you. Have a good day.